Captain Slovak's Ica ran cold. How could this happen? He taught countless creatures far more dangerous for years. A captive Terran, escaped confinement. He muted the alarm on the command console. The crew, or what was left of them, were well aware of the situation. How could it have gotten out? It didn't even have tentacles, nor proper mandibles. No time for that now. The creature was still loose on his ship. The highest priority was to get to the armory. Obviously there was no way the Terran could use a weapon, on account of the aforementioned lack of tentacles, but there was no point in taking chances. The dim ceramic corridors were silent, other than the Slovak's soft footfalls. As he rounded a corner, he could hear shallow panting and whimpering. Cautiously, he extended an eye stalk around the bend and saw Navlak, the navigator. She was lying in a puddle of her own ichor. Two of her arms snapped clean off, her eyes glazed and limp, deep in a pain trance. "You're going to be okay. Let's get you somewhere safe," he said, as he grabbed her under the remaining rigid arms. She didn't even acknowledge him. She was too far gone. That's a problem to address once the beast was contained. After an instant of consideration, he began dragging her to the armory. The med bay was all the way across the ship, too far to go unarmed. The armory was intact, and his thick door opened slowly once he entered the emergency authorization. His hearts were beating fast. Where was it? At first, his deafening battle cry could be heard all over the ship, but it had been silent since he'd left for the armory. With a practiced ease, he slid on his combat carapace. Unusually for a freighter captain, he served 3 tours in the hegemony as an orbital drop commando. This wouldn't be the first alien menace he'd battled, but a lot of time had passed since then. The neural uplink helmet connected his mind to the ship's sensors as he slotted rounds into his plasma caster. Diagnostics complete, he saw the beast. Sensors had it in crew store C, along with 2 injured and 1 dead crew. "Just wait here, Navlak. I'll take care of this infestation." She stared straight ahead, frozen in pain. He ran a tentacle along her shoulder as he left. "Just hang on a bit longer, and we'll get you patched right up." Slovak felt much more confident with a weapon in his hand, and a sensor link to the Terran. As he moved down the halls, he reviewed the situation. The wounded crew meant he couldn't just vent the whole section to space. It would come down to single combat. His foe came from a high-gravity world, so his spindly legs and live neck were more deadly than it looked. Watching it on sensors was chilling. Slow normal movement, with odd bursts of speed so fast it might as well be teleporting. Strongly at odds with the clumsy, waddling gait. He wouldn't have much time for a clean shot. Served him right for buying something from that filthy market, just because a pretty sales drone told him it was delicious. Slovak stopped outside the open door to crew store C to cycle his hearts, preloading his blood with oxygen and combat drugs. He closed all 6 of his eyes to focus. Sensors had it near the center back of the room, rooting through the shelves, likely looking for food or weapons. With the stealth of an elite infiltrator, he slid around the corner, and sighted his plasma caster on the filthy alien's back. With the cunning of what was obviously an apex predator, the Terran heard him, and spun to face Slovak. It hissed, and raised its upper, and only limbs. It might be trying to communicate a peaceful intent, but the time for negotiations were long past. Its tiny head bobbed on its long neck, as it shuffled towards him, hissing menacingly. In a practiced motion, he flicked the safety off the plasma caster, set output to max, and fired a shot right between his beady black eyes. Or where the eyes used to be. The head bobbed erratically, as it charged him with impossible speed. The alien's limbs went out almost as wide as the room, flapping loudly, his battle cry deafening. "Honk honk!" On legs too spindly by half, it crossed the room while dodging plasma shots. Time after time, the Terran's long beak struck Slovak's combat carapace, shattering the thermal silicates to dust. Long white feathers came loose as it pressed its attack. That spindly neck now moving with impossible speed and precision as it laid into him with a storm of blows. No matter how he turned or evaded, the Terran's beak found him. He felt his left lower arm break, his ribs shatter, and hot ichor leak between the plates of his combat carapace. Finally, the onslaught ended, his inhuman rage spent. The Terran wiggled his tail feathers indignantly and returned to the shelf it had been searching moments ago. Slovak barely clung to consciousness. His med probe was mostly destroyed in the assault, but the remaining redundant system showed him nothing but bad news. Several different injuries, each fatal, and his ichor viscosity was falling fast. A deep primal rage awoke for the first time in his long, long life. A rage at losing his life and a ship to some alien that didn't even have tentacles. With all his will, he moved his upper right arm, broken in several places, to where his plasma caster lay. Fighting through the agony, even as his life was leaking out of him, Slovak used the only remaining tentacle on that arm, on the firing contact. An incandescent bolt of pure energy streaked across, striking the escaped Terran in the back. The max output setting was usually reserved for anti-vehicle attacks, and caused the Terran to burst into a spray of feathers and steam. His last thoughts, as he lapsed into the eternal darkness, in a haze of agony, was that it actually did smell like it would have tasted pretty good.